In a world that screams for attention, the Stoic chooses silence. Where others chase validation, he chooses solitude. Where most crumble without company, he thrives in stillness. The Stoic stands alone, not because he has no one, but because he understands the power of building himself in solitude. 1. The noise of the world. We live in the noisiest time in human history. Every moment, we're bombarded by notifications, headlines, gossip, and distractions. The modern man is pulled in 1,000 directions before he even rises from bed. And yet, the Stoic does something radical. He rejects the noise. He doesn't wake to be consumed. He wakes with intent. He steps away from the buzzing world to reclaim his time, his energy, and most importantly, his mind. While others plug in, he unplugs. While others react, he reflects. This is not escapism, it's refinement. Without silence, there can be no clarity. Without clarity, there can be no direction. And without direction, a man is lost. The Stoic understands that to lead himself, he must first listen to the deeper voice that only speaks in quiet. This is where he finds the seeds of strength. Every morning ritual, every journal entry, every silent walk, these are his weapons against chaos. He observes the world not with fear, but detachment. Not with hatred, but understanding. And in this space, he is reborn, not as a follower of trends, but as the master of his own being. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of power. And that power belongs to the man who stands apart. To the man who chooses to build while the world screams. This is the first step on the path to becoming unshakable. 2. Choosing solitude, not isolation. There's a profound difference between solitude and isolation. One is a sanctuary. The other, a prison. And the Stoic knows exactly where the line lies. In solitude, the Stoic reconnects with himself. He is alone, not abandoned. Alone, not unloved. He isn't running from people, he's returning to presence. He understands that a man must first learn to be his own companion before he can ever walk beside others without losing himself. Solitude offers space, not just physical, but mental and emotional. It is the sacred ground where he confronts himself without masks, without roles, without performance. He isn't a father here. He isn't a worker, a friend, or a name on a screen. He is simply him. And in this simplicity, he finds clarity. He begins to ask hard questions. What do I value? What am I chasing? What do I fear? These are the questions most men avoid. But the Stoic sits with them. Because he knows that understanding himself is the first step to mastering life. While isolation creates weakness, solitude breeds strength. In isolation, we spiral. But in solitude, we build. It is the workshop of self-discipline, the gym of the mind, the meditation chamber of the soul. It's not easy. The first days can be painful. There's an urge to escape, to reach for the phone, the TV, the noise. But the Stoic resists. He leans in. And soon, he starts to feel something he hasn't in a long time: alignment. His actions begin to match his values. His mind starts to quiet. And his energy, once scattered across meaningless distractions, begins to consolidate like a river flowing with purpose. The Stoic chooses solitude not because he hates people, but because he refuses to be lost in them. He chooses solitude because he understands that if a man cannot sit alone with his thoughts, he is not free. Freedom doesn't begin with escape, it begins with self-possession. And that begins in solitude. 3. The mirror within. Solitude is a mirror. Not one that shows the body, but the soul. When the distractions fall away, when there's no one to impress or blame, a man is left with himself. And what he sees there is either a stranger or a student. The Stoic looks into that mirror not with shame, but with curiosity. He wants to know the man behind the actions. He wants to trace the source of his anger, his impatience, his addictions. Not to judge them, but to understand them. Most people run from that mirror. They bury themselves in entertainment, in relationships, in work. Anything to avoid the confrontation with their own reflection. But the Stoic leans in. because he knows that only a fool builds a house without first examining the foundation. He asks himself, what drives me? What scares me? What am I avoiding? These are not casual thoughts, they are daily confrontations. In the quiet of the early morning or the stillness of night, he engages in the hardest battle of all, self-honesty. And it is here, in this private war, that transformation begins. Not in the gym, not in a seminar, but in the silence of an honest moment with oneself. The Stoic journals, not for others to read, but for his soul to speak. He writes down what he sees, his flaws, his lies, his dreams. And in doing so, he begins to turn his weaknesses into insights, his shame into understanding, his habits into growth. He doesn't aim to become perfect, he aims to become real. Because a man who knows himself truly and deeply cannot be shaken by external chaos. He has already faced his own. So the mirror becomes a friend. A hard friend. An honest one. But a friend nonetheless. And with each glance into that reflection, the Stoic builds something that few men ever touch, self-respect. Respect not for who he pretends to be, but for who he is becoming. 4. Discipline over desire. In the solitude of the Stoic's world, a new order emerges. One not dictated by cravings, but by command. The world outside rewards indulgence. It whispers, follow your feelings, chase the high, satisfy the urge. But the Stoic knows, this path leads only to weakness. He understands that desire, untamed, is a master that devours. And so, in his solitude, he learns to break free from its leash. Not through suppression, but through discipline. Discipline isn't punishment, it's liberation. It's the daily decision to act from purpose, not impulse. To rise when it's easier to sleep. To speak when silence is cowardice. To restrain when indulgence is easy. The Stoic builds routines not for show, but for strength. Morning rituals that sharpen his mind. Training that hardens his body. Study that deepens his wisdom. Each act, no matter how small, is a brick in the fortress of his will. When others break at the first discomfort, he stands tall. Because he has trained for discomfort. He has embraced hunger, cold, silence, failure. Not to suffer, but to grow. Not to be seen, but to become. Desire fades. Pleasure passes. But the fruits of discipline endure. Strength, clarity, freedom. These are not gifts, they are rewards. Earned through repetition, through sacrifice, through self-command. The Stoic doesn't eliminate desire, he tames it. He puts it in its place. He learns to want less, and in doing so, he becomes more. So when the world comes knocking with temptations dressed in luxury, he smiles. He does not need them. He already has everything he needs, within. Discipline is the quiet power of the man who commands himself. And that man? He does not chase. He builds. 5. The fortress of focus. In a world of a million tabs, endless scrolls, and dopamine traps, focus is a dying art. But for the Stoic, focus is not optional, it is essential. It is the lens through which he channels his energy, the sword that cuts through distraction. He doesn't do 10 things halfway, he does one thing with intensity. He understands that scattered attention leads to a scattered life. So, he builds his day like a fortress. No wasted windows. No mindless wandering. Every task, intentional. Every hour, protected. Focus begins with clarity. The Stoic knows his priorities. He does not start the day asking what others want from him, he asks what he demands from himself. And once the mission is clear, nothing pulls him off course. Not the urge to check his phone. Not the latest headline. Not someone else's urgency. He is unmoved by noise because his inner compass is set. He works in deep, uninterrupted blocks. He reads without skimming. He listens without waiting to speak. He builds without chasing applause. This doesn't mean he never falters, but when he does, he returns quickly. His focus is not fragile. It's trained. It's guarded. It's sacred. In a world where most drift through the day like leaves in the wind, the Stoic moves like an arrow. Direct, intentional, relentless. Because he knows that focus isn't just about productivity. It's about purpose. And a man with focus is a man with fire. A man with fire doesn't chase, he builds. Chapter 6. Embracing the Void. There comes a moment in every man's solitude when the silence grows loud. When the absence of noise starts to echo. When the distractions have faded and he is left with nothing. This is the void. Most men fear this place. They mistake it for emptiness, for loneliness, for something to be avoided. But the Stoic knows better. The void is not a curse, it's a crucible. A place of potential. A forge of the soul. Here, stripped of validation, of schedules, of entertainment, the Stoic meets the raw material of existence. The uncomfortable questions arise. Who am I when there's nothing to do? What remains when all is still? In that void, he doesn't run. He breathes. He stays. And slowly, he begins to feel it, the quiet power of simply being. No role to play. No performance to give. Just presence. Just being. It is here that creativity sparks. That ideas are born. That truths emerge. It is here that the Stoic realizes he is not empty, he is open. And in that openness, he builds. He writes. He reflects. He creates. He dreams. The void becomes not a pit, but a canvas. And when he emerges from it, he is stronger, more centered, more alive. Because he has touched the place most men avoid. And he has turned it into his power. The void isn't the end. It's the beginning. For the man who does not fear silence, anything is possible. Because when you can thrive in nothingness, you can build anything. 7. The weight of responsibility. The modern world teaches men to run from responsibility, to seek comfort, convenience, and escape. But the Stoic does the opposite. He leans into the weight. He embraces it. Because he knows that responsibility is not a burden, it is a bridge. A bridge between who he is and who he must become. The Stoic doesn't wait for someone else to lead. He leads himself first. He doesn't blame the world for his condition. He examines his choices, owns his failures, and reclaims his agency. Responsibility is not about control, it's about courage. The courage to say, this is mine. My life. My choices. My outcomes. The world may be chaotic, but how I respond, that is on me. While others deflect, the Stoic reflects. While others point fingers, he opens his hand and accepts what must be carried. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Every man is given a weight to carry. Some deny it. Some drop it. But the Stoic lifts. Slowly. Steadily. Daily. He shoulders the responsibilities of his life with quiet pride, not for praise, but for peace. The peace that comes from knowing he is not drifting, he is anchoring. He is not evading, he is engaging. Responsibility transforms a boy into a man. It calls him to rise above excuses, to become a protector, a provider, a presence. It is not glamorous. It is not loud. But it is noble. And with each responsibility he embraces, his work, his word, his family, his values, the Stoic becomes immovable. Grounded. Respected not for what he says, but for what he upholds. Because in the end, freedom does not come from abandoning weight, it comes from carrying it with strength. The Stoic understands, a man who avoids responsibility remains a slave. But a man who accepts it becomes a king. 8. The path forward. The Stoic has walked through silence, stood firm in solitude, faced his own reflection, and carried the weight of his choices. Now he stands at the edge of something greater, not the end of the journey, but the beginning of one lived with intention. He doesn't return to the world to escape solitude, but to embody what he built within it. He walks among others not to be seen, but to serve. His strength is quiet. His presence, unwavering. His purpose, clear. The path of the Stoic is not a retreat from life, it is a full, deliberate engagement with it. With fewer words and deeper actions. With less noise and more meaning. He does not chase status. He creates value. He does not demand respect. He lives in a way that earns it. He knows storms will come. The world will test him. Doubt will whisper. Chaos will return. But he does not fear it, because he no longer relies on the world to center him. That anchor lives within. The Stoic path is not for everyone. It is narrow. It is steep. But for the man who walks it, there is peace not found in comfort, but in character. So he keeps walking, quietly, steadily, not because the world watches, but because he knows who he is. And the man who knows who he is can never be lost again. 9. Mastery over emotion. To feel is human. But to be ruled by feelings? That is slavery. The Stoic does not deny his emotions. He recognizes them, welcomes them, studies them. But he does not bow to them. Anger, fear, envy, excitement, these are visitors, not kings. And he treats them as such. When rage rises, he breathes. When anxiety calls, he listens, but he does not obey. He watches the wave, but he is not swept away by it. The Stoic understands that emotions are signals, not instructions. They reveal much, but they do not decide. Mastery over emotion is not suppression. It is sovereignty. It is the ability to respond rather than react, to choose principle over impulse. And in that choice lies true freedom. 10. Building the inner citadel. Life will break what is weak. Storms come for every man. The only question is, what have you built within? The Stoic builds an inner citadel, a place no insult can reach, no failure can shake, no loss can destroy. It is forged through trials, reflection, discipline, and solitude. Brick by brick, it becomes a sanctuary of strength. He does not expect the world to be kind. He does not depend on it to be fair. His peace is not conditional. It is chosen. It is guarded. And it is immovable. The inner citadel is not a wall against life. It is a foundation for living fully. And in it, the Stoic finds not escape, but indestructibility. 11. Becoming the example. The Stoic does not preach, he practices. He does not demand others follow. He walks and lets his path speak. In a world desperate for leaders, he becomes a model. Quietly, steadily, not by shouting his values, but by embodying them. He shows others what is possible when a man chooses clarity over chaos, discipline over desire, purpose over pleasure. He becomes the calm in the storm, the anchor in the drift, the light in the dark. To lead, he first leads himself. That is the Stoic way. R12. Living deliberately. Every action, a choice. Every moment, an opportunity. The Stoic does not drift, he decides. He lives deliberately, knowing that time is limited, energy is precious, and legacy is real. He speaks with intention, moves with purpose, listens with presence. He does not chase every opportunity. He chooses the few that align. He doesn't seek to do more, but to do what matters. To live deliberately is to live awake. To live like it matters. Because it does. 13. The power of presence. In a distracted world, presence is rare and powerful. The Stoic trains himself to be fully here. Not in yesterday's regret or tomorrow's fear, but in the now. When he speaks, he means it. When he listens, he absorbs. When he acts, he commits. This presence makes him magnetic, trustworthy, reliable. Because presence is more than attention. It's respect. For time. For people. For life itself. And the man who is present, truly present, can do more in 1 hour than the distracted man does in 10. The Stoic becomes the eye of the storm. While others are swept away by distraction, he remains rooted. Not just awake, but aware. That's the difference. 14. Detachment from outcome. The Stoic sets goals. He works hard. He pursues excellence. But he is not chained to the outcome. Why? Because he understands that outcomes are not fully in his control, only effort is. He plants the seeds. He tends the soil. But the rain? The sun? That's not his domain. And so he learns detachment. Not indifference, but trust. He detaches from results so he can focus on action. He doesn't cling. He doesn't obsess. He moves. When success comes, he's grateful. When it doesn't, he's unshaken. Because his worth was never in the result, it was in his integrity. This detachment is not weakness, it's power. The power to keep going. To stay level. To remain free. 15. Walking with integrity. A man's character is not what he says in comfort, but how he acts under pressure. The Stoic walks with integrity, always. Even when no one's watching. Especially then. Because he knows the real test is not public, it's private. He honors his word. He keeps his promises. He owns his mistakes. He doesn't cut corners. Doesn't fake effort. Doesn't betray his principles. Why? Because integrity isn't just about others, it's about self-respect. And a man without integrity may win for a moment, but he loses himself forever. The Stoic doesn't play that game. He walks the harder path. Because to look in the mirror and stand tall, that is a victory that can't be taken. 16. Embracing simplicity. Voiceover. In a world obsessed with more money, more things, more followers, the Stoic steps back and asks, what do I really need? Modern life encourages consumption. It equates worth with wealth, happiness with ownership, and meaning with noise. But the Stoic sees through this illusion. He knows that the man who owns less often lives more. To embrace simplicity is not to reject comfort, it's to question clutter. What distracts, what drains, what deceives? Simplicity begins with the physical. The Stoic curates his environment with purpose. His home is not filled with excess but with essentials. Not sterile, but intentional. A clean desk, a simple room, a quiet space. These are not signs of lack, they are signs of clarity. Next comes time. He guards it like treasure. He says no often. Not because he's arrogant, but because he's focused. He doesn't fill his calendar to feel important, he clears it to stay aligned. Then comes speech. He doesn't talk to fill silence. He speaks with weight. Each word matters. He knows that noise dilutes truth. Simplicity also touches the soul. The Stoic strips away roles, masks, and performative identity. He doesn't need to prove himself constantly. He is who he is, without decoration. Even in his goals, simplicity rules. He doesn't chase everything. He chooses a few things that matter and pours himself fully into them. No scattered efforts. Just focused energy. And in doing so, he experiences something rare, peace. Simplicity is not just about owning less. It's about needing less to feel whole. It's about learning that happiness doesn't live in what you possess, but in what you release. In a noisy world, simplicity is a superpower. While others drown in options, the Stoic moves with clarity. While others clutter their minds, he creates space for insight. While others chase the next thing, he finds joy in what already is. The simple life is not lesser. It is richer, in presence, in awareness, in truth. And so, the Stoic chooses simplicity. Not to retreat from life, but to engage with it fully, without distraction, without distortion. Just depth. Just presence. Just peace. 17. Mastery in the mundane. The world glorifies the extraordinary, the record breakers, the once-in-a-lifetime talents, the grand gestures. But the Stoic finds power in the ordinary. He knows that the foundation of greatness isn't built in moments of applause, but in what is done when no one is watching. The mundane is where the true warrior is forged. Each morning routine. Each workout. Each act of restraint. Each time he chooses discipline over distraction. These are not small acts, they are sacred. They are declarations of who he is becoming. Most people seek novelty. The Stoic seeks depth. He doesn't chase new routines, he perfects the simple ones. He doesn't skip the basics, he masters them. Repetition doesn't bore him, it refines him. He understands that mastery is not a sudden achievement. It is a commitment, a slow burn of daily effort. To make his bed, to move his body, to tend his mind. These things aren't trivial, they are transformative. Because how you do the small things is how you do everything. When the Stoic washes a dish, he is present. When he walks, he observes. When he eats, he tastes. There is no moment too simple to live with excellence. And through that presence, he cultivates power. While others wait for the big break, the Stoic builds himself quietly in the moments they dismiss. The mundane becomes his training ground. The repetition becomes his rhythm. The simplicity becomes his strength. In time, the ordinary reveals its hidden beauty. And in mastering the mundane, the Stoic becomes anything but ordinary. 18. Building inner wealth. Voiceover. We live in a world where wealth is flaunted, where numbers in a bank account often define success. But the Stoic knows that true wealth cannot be stolen, taxed, or lost. It lives within. Inner wealth is resilience. It's composure when chaos strikes. It's confidence that doesn't need validation. It's peace that isn't shaken by headlines or gossip. To build inner wealth, the Stoic invests differently. He invests in wisdom, not distraction. In reflection, not reaction. In growth, not comparison. He reads not just to gather facts, but to find truth. He contemplates, journals, walks alone in nature. He studies his own emotions like a scholar studies ancient texts, deeply, patiently. This wealth isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It shows in calm responses, in steady habits, in grounded choices. And like any treasure, it must be protected. The Stoic sets boundaries, not to isolate, but to guard what matters. He doesn't spend his time mindlessly. He doesn't give his energy to everything. He saves it for what builds him. Inner wealth means he doesn't panic when things go wrong. He has a reserve, a quiet strength, a bank account of calm. When the market crashes or plans fall apart, he stays composed. Because he knows external things come and go. But who he is, what is built inside, remains. This wealth can't be measured in likes or labels. It's measured in presence, in peace, in purpose. So while others chase riches, the Stoic builds riches that cannot be taken. The kind that grow with age. The kind that light the path, no matter how dark it gets. He is not poor when he owns little, he is poor only when he is empty inside. And so he builds. Quietly. Daily. Powerfully. He builds inner wealth, the kind of fortune that frees. 19. Enduring the storm. Life doesn't promise ease. Even the Stoic knows pain, loss, failure. But unlike most, he prepares, not for if the storm comes, but when. The Stoic doesn't avoid discomfort, he trains in it. Cold showers, early mornings, rejection, hunger for meaning, all these are part of his ritual. He understands, you cannot grow muscles without resistance. The storm does not surprise him. He's seen it before in the faces of history. Seneca exiled, Epictetus enslaved, Marcus Aurelius buried in duty and grief. Yet they stood firm. They endured, not despite the storm, but through it. Endurance isn't gritting your teeth. It's breathing deep. It's staying rooted when the winds scream. It's acting with principle even when no one is watching. The Stoic doesn't run. He doesn't curse the clouds. He tightens his grip on what he controls, his thoughts, his responses, his values. Everything else, he lets go. When others collapse under weight, he straightens his spine. He understands the storm will shape him or shatter him, and the difference lies in how he meets it. So he welcomes trials. Not with joy, but with readiness. Because every storm is a mirror. It shows what was weak and what was worthy. The Stoic knows, storms are not interruptions to life. They are life. They strip away illusions. They test your philosophy. They call you back to what is real. And when the clouds break, when the light returns, the Stoic emerges not bitter, but better. Stronger. Quieter. Wiser. He is not the man who survived by chance. He is the man who endured by choice. Because the Stoic doesn't just wait for the storm to pass. He becomes the calm within it. 20. The power of presence. In a world that is always rushing to achieve, to reply, to scroll, to move faster, the Stoic does something radical. He slows down. He practices presence. Fully. Fiercely. Presence is not passive. It is the act of anchoring your awareness, of being rooted in the now, instead of drifting into regrets of the past or anxieties about the future. The Stoic knows that this moment is all that truly exists, and so he makes it sacred. He listens, not to reply, but to understand. He walks, not to get somewhere, but to experience each step. He eats, not to rush through fuel, but to save a life. Each act becomes a meditation. Each moment, a mirror. When others multitask, he single-tasks. When others seek escape, he leans in. He knows that running from the present is running from reality, and he's here to face it. Presence makes him powerful, because it makes him real. He doesn't get lost in noise. He doesn't chase the illusion of control. He roots himself in the only place he can act, the now. This focus gives him an edge. While others spin in distractions, he builds clarity. While others lose time in endless thought loops, he takes action, clean, direct, aligned. Presence deepens his relationships. People feel seen around him, because he truly sees. He offers his time not as a transaction, but as a gift. And presence reveals truth. It shows him what matters, what's noise, what's real. It guides his intuition, sharpens his choices, grounds his power. The Stoic is not lost in what ifs. He lives in what is, because he understands that every breath is borrowed. That time is not infinite, and that the greatest act of rebellion in a distracted world is to be here fully. So he returns to this moment again and again, not as a burden, but as a blessing. The present is not just a point in time, it is his temple, and within it he builds a life of meaning, one moment at a time. 21. The strength of self-reliance. Voiceover. In a world that often encourages dependence on others, on technology, on constant approval, the Stoic turns inward. He understands that the greatest power is self-reliance. Self-reliance is not about isolation or arrogance. It's about knowing that no matter what life throws, he has the strength within to stand firm and move forward. The Stoic builds his character like a fortress, strong, resilient, and unyielding. He trusts his own judgment, not blindly, but after careful thought and reflection. He knows that relying too much on others leaves him vulnerable to disappointment. When others panic in uncertainty, he stays grounded. When they seek validation, he looks inward for worth. Self-reliance means responsibility. He owns his actions, his emotions, his choices. No excuses, no blaming. The Stoic stands accountable for himself, and that is freedom. He prepares himself to face life's challenges alone if necessary. He develops skills, cultivates wisdom, and sharpens his mind so that he is ready for whatever comes. But self-reliance is not solitude's enemy. It's its companion. It is the inner strength that solitude builds, and the foundation on which all other virtues stand. By mastering himself first, the Stoic becomes a pillar of strength for others, not because he depends on them, but because he chooses to give from a place of fullness. In a world quick to offer help but slow to foster independence, the Stoic embraces self-reliance as a form of empowerment. Not as a rejection of community, but as a testament to his ability to walk his path unshaken. He knows that the most powerful man is not the one who never stumbles, but the one who rises alone, stronger each time. And so, he builds himself, brick by brick, day by day, becoming unbreakable. 22. The discipline of detachment. The Stoic understands a profound truth: attachment breeds suffering. When we cling too tightly to people, outcomes, possessions, we set ourselves up for pain. Detachment is not indifference. It is not coldness or apathy. It is the conscious choice to love fully, yet hold loosely. To care deeply, yet remain unshaken. The Stoic practices detachment as discipline. He trains his mind to observe without being overwhelmed. to appreciate without depending, to engage without losing himself. He knows that the world is impermanent. People change, fortunes rise and fall, circumstances shift. To anchor his happiness on any of these is to invite disappointment. Through detachment, he frees himself from the chains of expectation. He stops chasing after things that are not meant for him and embraces what is, with grace. This doesn't mean he is passive or resigned. On the contrary, he acts fully and intentionally, knowing that the outcome is beyond his control. The discipline of detachment allows him to face loss with courage, to bear hardship with dignity, and to celebrate success without arrogance. He understands that his true value lies not in what he holds, but in who he is. Detachment sharpens his focus. It reveals what truly matters. It clears the fog of desire and fear. In a culture obsessed with ownership and control, the Stoic's detachment is radical freedom. It is the art of loving without losing, of living fully without being owned. And in this balance, he builds a fortress of the soul, unmovable, unbreakable, free. 23. The power of reflection. In the haste of daily life, it's easy to lose ourselves in endless doing. The Stoic knows that true growth comes not just from action, but from reflection. Reflection is the mirror of the soul. It allows us to see clearly who we are, what we value, and where we are headed. It turns experience into wisdom. Each day, the Stoic sets aside time, not out of obligation, but out of necessity, to pause and look inward, to review his thoughts, his emotions, his choices. He asks himself, did I act with integrity? Did I speak with purpose? Did I live in alignment with my values? This process isn't always comfortable. Sometimes he faces mistakes, failures, moments of weakness. But he doesn't shy away. He meets them with honesty and curiosity. Through reflection, he learns. He adjusts. He grows stronger. It is not enough to move forward blindly. The Stoic's journey is deliberate. Every step is examined, every lesson absorbed. Reflection also brings gratitude. In the quiet moments, he counts his blessings, not possessions, but moments, lessons, connections. The practice of reflection transforms the mundane into the meaningful. It turns routine into ritual. It is a powerful tool against distraction and chaos. By turning inward, the Stoic maintains clarity and purpose. In a noisy world that demands constant movement, the power of reflection is a rare gift. It is the foundation of wisdom, the root of peace, and the gateway to mastery. The Stoic knows that to build a life worth living, he must build it thoughtfully. And so, he reflects. Daily. Deeply. Intentionally. Because in reflection lies the power to change everything. 24. The art of patience. In a world fueled by instant gratification, the Stoic embraces patience as a vital strength. He knows that everything worthwhile takes time, and rushing only leads to frustration. Patience is more than waiting, it's how we wait. It is a calm endurance, a steady perseverance through difficulty, delay, or provocation without losing composure. The Stoic understands that growth is a process. Seeds don't sprout overnight. Mastery is not a single event but a lifetime journey. When faced with obstacles, he resists the urge to react impulsively or give up. Instead, he breathes, stays present, and trusts the unfolding. Patience teaches humility. It reminds us that some things are beyond our control, and rushing only disturbs the natural order. It also builds resilience. Each moment of patient endurance strengthens the mind's capacity to handle more challenge, more uncertainty, more waiting. The Stoic sees impatience as a thief of peace. It clouds judgment, distorts priorities, and breeds anxiety. Through patience, he gains clarity. He sees setbacks as lessons, delays as opportunities, and difficulties as training grounds. This doesn't mean passivity or complacency. The Stoic acts decisively when needed but accepts the timing of life with grace. He cultivates patience through small acts, waiting without complaint, listening without interrupting, accepting without resistance. In embracing patience, the Stoic aligns himself with the natural rhythm of life. He knows that the greatest victories often come after the longest waits. And so, he builds not just with strength, but with patience, steady, unwavering, and true. 25. Finding strength in stillness. In a world that never stops moving, the Stoic understands the profound power of stillness. Stillness is not emptiness. It is not passivity. It is the quiet center from which strength flows. When chaos surrounds him, the Stoic retreats inward. He finds refuge in moments of silence, away from noise, distraction, and urgency. Stillness allows the mind to reset, the heart to calm, and the soul to reconnect with what truly matters. In stillness, the Stoic gains clarity. Answers that were hidden in the noise become visible. Solutions emerge from the quiet. This stillness is cultivated, not accidental. It is a deliberate practice, through meditation, solitude, deep breathing, or simply sitting in nature. The Stoic doesn't fear silence or solitude. He embraces them as tools for growth and resilience. In the stillness, he faces himself honestly. He confronts doubts, fears, and desires with calm acceptance. Stillness sharpens focus. It strengthens patience. It builds endurance. The world often equates busyness with productivity, noise with progress. But the Stoic knows the truth. Without stillness, there is no growth. He who masters stillness masters himself. Stillness is the foundation of wisdom. It is the soil where peace takes root. And from this place of quiet strength, the Stoic rises, not hurried, not shaken, but steady and strong. Because true power is not in constant motion, but in stillness made strong. 26. The courage to be vulnerable. In a world that prizes strength and stoicism, true courage is often misunderstood. It's not the absence of fear or weakness, it is the willingness to be vulnerable. The Stoic knows that vulnerability is not a flaw, but a form of strength. It takes courage to show one's true self, to admit uncertainty, and to embrace imperfection. To be vulnerable is to be real. To open the heart even when it might break. To speak honestly, even when the words feel risky. The Stoic practices vulnerability as a bridge, not just to others, but to himself. He acknowledges his fears, doubts, and pain without shame. This openness does not make him weak. It makes him human, and deeply powerful. Vulnerability allows for genuine connection. It dissolves the masks and walls that separate us. The Stoic understands that hiding behind a facade only isolates. But by revealing his true self, he invites trust, empathy, and growth. He knows that pain and joy are two sides of the same coin. To feel deeply is to live fully. Vulnerability also fuels resilience. When we accept our fragility, we gain the freedom to heal and the courage to try again. The Stoic embraces vulnerability as part of his journey. It is the soil from which authenticity and wisdom grow. He does not seek to avoid discomfort, but to meet it with openness and grace. In a culture that often equates vulnerability with weakness, the Stoic redefines it as the highest form of courage. Because to stand alone and build, one must first have the courage to be seen. The Stoic's path, standing alone, building strong. As we come to the close of this journey, we reflect on what it truly means to stand alone and build. The Stoic's path is not an easy one. It requires strength, discipline, and a profound commitment to oneself. But it is also a path of immense power and peace. The Stoic does not chase after fleeting desires or external approval. He knows that chasing others' expectations only leads to emptiness. Instead, he turns inward, towards clarity, wisdom, and purpose. Solitude, often misunderstood as loneliness, is for him a source of power. It is in solitude that the Stoic finds space to think deeply, to listen to his own voice, and to build a foundation that cannot be shaken by the chaos of the world. Building a life of meaning is a slow, deliberate process. It is not about grand gestures or instant success. It is about daily acts of courage and discipline, showing up even when no one is watching, mastering the mundane, and nurturing inner wealth. The Stoic embraces simplicity. He strips away what is unnecessary and focuses on what truly matters. His possessions, his time, and his words are chosen with care and purpose. He cultivates patience, understanding that growth cannot be rushed. He practices detachment, freeing himself from the suffering of clinging to the uncontrollable. He embraces vulnerability, knowing that true strength comes from authenticity. Most importantly, the Stoic stands resilient in the face of life's storms. Pain, loss, and failure are inevitable, but how he meets them defines him. He does not break under pressure. Instead, he becomes the calm within the storm. The strength of self-reliance empowers him to trust his own judgment and walk his path with confidence. Reflection guides him to learn from every experience and continually refine his character. Stillness becomes his refuge, where he regains strength and clarity. And through it all, the Stoic builds, not just a life, but a legacy of presence, wisdom, and peace. This is not a path for the faint of heart. It requires rejecting the noise of the crowd, resisting easy distractions, and embracing the sometimes lonely road of self-mastery. But the reward is profound. A life lived on one's own terms. A life grounded in truth, freedom, and deep fulfillment. As you watch this, consider what parts of the Stoic's journey resonate with you. What distractions can you release? What strength within you is waiting to be built? Remember, standing alone is not being alone. It is standing firm in your own power, unshaken by circumstance, unyielding to pressure, and open to growth. The Stoic does not wait for permission or perfect conditions. He builds now, with what he has, where he is. And so can you. The path is yours to walk. The strength is yours to build. Stand alone, build strong, and embrace the power of solitude. Because in solitude, you do not lose yourself, you find yourself.